All right, folks, apologies for getting on here a little bit late. Been a bit of a busy afternoon. I'm just going to get this posted on social media, and then we will start taking a look at the forecast. Be sure to throw any questions you have in the chat, even if you're talking about like localized flooding and stuff like that. I will talk about some of the evacuations and stuff we have going on down in Auburn. I was down there earlier today, and we can look at some of the video that I've taken, including some I have not yet released. I'll just show it here in just a second. We get this posted real quick. All right, we've got it all posted there. Let me get this going. So again, be sure to throw any questions in the chat here. We'll start with our satellite imagery, and we can actually zoom out. We'll go over here, and we can kind of see our system coming in here, our next atmospheric river. Because believe it or not, we have another one coming in here. And if it was something that had been coming in all by itself, it would have been one that we would be wanting to talk about. And of course, it's going to be big anyway, even though we have all the rivers already somewhat high. So just starting here with our overall pattern, you can see that our next atmospheric river, classic Pineapple Express, look at that, it's coming straight from the Hawaiian Islands, and that current of moisture just moves straight up to the Pacific Northwest. You can see it's starting to move into western Washington right now. We take a look at the radar, look at that, you got the rain just starting to move on to the coast right now. Some areas up by Vancouver Island, they're getting some more rain already. And it looks like it's starting to go into parts of the North Sound too. Now, this is not coming in, obviously, at a very good time at all. As you can see here, this is our river forecast, and what we have here. So if you're looking at these gauges, the square, so here's Snoqualmie River, Snoqualmie Falls. The red square is the forecast. It's forecast to get up to moderate flood stage. The little circle in the middle is what it's recording right now. So it's at normal right now, no flood. That's the green. Now we do have a couple of rivers that are still flooding and are just going to be pushed back up by this next round of moisture. For example, one I was at today here is the White River in Auburn, and you can see, look at how high it is. It's just been fluctuating right up there in moderate flood stage. And I will pull up a video here for you guys to see. Actually, we might not be able to look at that one. We'll look at a different video here in just a second. This is really high. The White River it's going right up against some temporary flood barriers and stuff like that. Additionally, just to the north, the Green River, also in Auburn, is still quite high. You can see it's remained way up at the high edge of minor flood stage, still above where it's supposed to be forecast by a decent bit, and you can see it stays high all the way through next week. And even the White River there in Auburn as well. So both the Green River and the White River in Auburn remaining quite high, and we're talking like way up here for the White River in moderate flood stage all the way through this entire week, Monday to Friday, everything. I mean, even some of these other rivers, the Cedar River at Landsberg there, see it's going down, but remains in bank full all the way through next week. Same thing with the Cedar River a little bit further down there in Renton. You can see it gets below flood stage as we go into, that would be Monday morning or Monday evening, and it remains right on the border of flood stage there all the way through almost to Christmas. Now, some of the other rivers will have just a normal crest and then come back down. Look at the Snoqualmie River at Snoqualmie Falls. It starts to rise as we go through Monday night, rises a lot more as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. Peaks there in moderate flood stage, 34,000 cubic feet per second. Put it in perspective, this past atmospheric river, it peaked at 70,000. So this is really nothing compared to what we just had. But it is going to bring another round of flooding down to areas down through the Snoqualmie Valley. You can look at the Snoqualmie River gauge at Carnation. You can see it just we just got out of major flood stage not that long ago, and it's going to go all the way back up to major flood stage there as we go into Wednesday. So not nearly as big of a round of flooding where we got up to about 60 feet or so, but still, this is not what you want to see, that you have another round of flooding going on. The Snohomish River at Snohomish there, of course, we just hit that made a new all-time record there back last week. You can see it drops back down, but then it starts to rise again, first as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, then as we rise again there up into moderate flood stage as we go into Wednesday, and then we finally get out of bank full stage as we get to next Saturday. The Skykomish River up near Gold Bar, I know there was a lot of problems up in this area. It was really high, almost just within a foot of the all-time record. Drops back down. You see we get up toward moderate flood stage there as we go into Wednesday, but still it will remain below any of the flood waters that we saw previously. One of the big trouble spots, of course, is going to be the Skagit River. The Skagit River at Mount Vernon is still in flood stage. After setting a new all-time record there, you can see it goes back down, but then we have a double peak in major flood stage twice because of this upcoming storm. So you can see as we go through Monday night into Tuesday, by Tuesday afternoon, we're back in major flood stage. Tuesday evening, back in major flood stage. Goes back down into moderate flood stage on Wednesday, but then by Thursday, it's back in major flood stage for the third time in the past week. You can see it finally starts to drop again. They're only getting back up on minor flood stage there as we go into Friday before starting to drop even more as you go into to Sunday. But this is not good to see, especially for folks up on the Skagit River who have been dealing with a lot of flooding. Same thing down at the gauge in Concrete. You can see it's going to peak, again, not nearly as high as we were this past week, but look at that. You get that first peak into major flood stage Tuesday morning, then another peak into major flood stage Wednesday evening, and then we start to drop a little bit more, certainly, but still, this is not what we want to see for folks up on the Skagit River. And then up even in eastern Washington, we do still have some flooding, I believe. Yakima River and Natchez River going to get back into minor flood stage. Still in minor flood stage at the Yakima River down by Benton City there. You can see it peaked in major flood stage and is slowly going down. And we have a lot to talk about besides the flooding, but I wanted to start with the flooding. Let me point out a couple more. The Cowlitz River up in Randall was up pretty high for a while. It's going to get back up into moderate flood stage as we go into Wednesday evening. And then around Chehalis, you can see some of the rivers will be elevated, but nothing above what they were at previously. And then, of course, as always, the Skokomish River over there by Hood Canal is going to get back up into minor flood stage all the way through, or moderate flood stage all the way through, like, next Thursday. So a couple other things to point out. The Puyallup River will rise again, but not to the level of the crazy impacts that we had. You can see it's going to get up into minor flood stage. In Ording, it tied its all-time record, which is not even on this screen. Gets up into minor flood stage on Wednesday and then drops back down. The Puyallup River in downtown Puyallup was up in minor flood stage. You can see it almost gets back there again, but not quite. It gets to bank full and then goes back down as we go into Wednesday. So, of course, the biggest stories for the flooding is going to be the White and Green rivers because they are both controlled by dams, and those dams need to stay at a certain level. And the White River, obviously, you can see here, it's in moderate flood stage. It's the river that is in the most flooding right now across the region. And look at how that flood warning is in effect till further notice. I'm going to pull up this graphic here. The Mud Mountain Dam is what controls the White River and controls that level that it's at. And I found this interesting graphic here that shows kind of what's going on up at the Mud Mountain Dam and why they are having to release as much water as they have been these last few days. So let me pull that in here. So this is from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and this is a pretty interesting thing to see. So what you're looking at here, your top of the dam is at 1,257 feet. The top of the flood capacity it has there, 1,215 feet there. And then this is your current level at 1,172 feet. This is very high for this anyway, and you can see inflow right now, 5,300 CFS, outflow, 10,300 CFS. So they're trying to lower it because they're anticipating more rain coming in. This was up as high as, I believe, 1185, which means they were only 20 feet from the top of their flood capacity, which is considered 100% storage of in the dam, because obviously you don't want to have it stored up to the top of the dam because that's super dangerous. So the reason there's so much flooding downstream along the White River is because of how they need to keep the dam at a somewhat decent level so that it doesn't get too full and they don't have to end up putting this into major flood stage. You can see even right now with how much they've been releasing and all that, it is still at about 90% capacity there on the White River. So that's not great, but they kind of just have to do it. And you can see on this forecast, this is where it's going to continue all the way through the foreseeable future, because they just have to, they can't allow this to get too full, because then you have huge problems that come from that. So in terms of precipitation and all that, what are we really talking about here? So this is the European model, as always, looking at the precipitable water anomaly. This is looking at the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere and kind of just how much there is and where it's going. Obviously, we've been looking at this graphic a ton the last few weeks, and you can see as we go through tonight into tomorrow, you see this Pineapple Express here just slamming into western Washington. Look at some of those values as we go overnight into the morning. You can see the rain actually doesn't last too long. It starts to push out of the area by the evening, but we just get another system coming in behind it that's cooler, not as much of an atmospheric river, but still bringing a lot of moisture into the area all the way through Wednesday. Then we get some potential wind events and all that coming in. And then as we go off into the end of the week, you can see more systems coming up toward the Pacific Northwest. How far north those get and what they really have in them is a little bit uncertain at this time. So another way we can look at that is the precipitation type forecast. So you can see as we go through tonight into tomorrow, especially by about 1 a.m., you get some pretty heavy rain at times across the Pacific Northwest. Look at how high the snow level is there. You're getting basically no snow in the Cascades at all. And then that rain continues all the way into Monday night. Then you see we have showers continuing into Tuesday morning. Then our next system moves in, but look at how much lower those snow levels are, and we do start to get mountain snow. That's going to limit the river flooding, which is good to see. And then you see we have this low move through that could bring some gusty winds as we go into Tuesday night and Wednesday. It still is raining across the lowlands, but it's snowing in the mountains. You can see some really heavy mountain snow potentially as we go through Wednesday into the morning, and then we start to turn a little bit showery as we go into Thursday. And you see we get another system coming toward the area, potentially bringing an atmospheric river to parts of Oregon. And if you stay on the north side of it, we get a little bit cooler. So hopefully that helps us out a little bit. We really don't need any more flooding and stuff like that. And we cool down as you go off toward the end of this forecast, but that's a little bit too far out for my liking right now. So yeah, right there though, you can see, look how high that snow level is. And let me pull up something here real quick from the Weather Service. I got it right here. Taking a look at the snow levels, this kind of just shows you what's going on. So this is for tomorrow, and look at these snow levels. You're at like 6,800 to 7,000 foot snow levels there, which is going to basically mean that any precipitation that falls in the Cascades, the vast majority of it will just be rain. But then watch as we go in the next couple days. As we go into Tuesday, you can see that snow level craters down to 3,700 feet at Stevens Pass, 4,000 feet at Snoqualmie Pass. So that will bring snow to Stevens and the higher passes. And then look at by the time we get into Wednesday there with that cooler system coming in, you got that snow level all the way down to 2,000, 2,500 feet. So that's pretty good to see. Let me check in the chat there. Hey, Jamie, thanks for being first. Daniel says, happy to see the Cascades. We'll be getting some snow next week. Hopefully Thursday's rise in the snow level doesn't erode it too much. Yeah, let me double check that. So this is through Thursday, and then yeah, it looks like we're going to do pretty good. The snow level gets pretty low there as we go toward the end of the week, down to about 1,500 feet, so that's pretty good to see. Brian Rock, thanks for joining. Andrew says Ording traded its floodplain for golf courses and subdivisions. Yeah, that is kind of what happened, and in some cases got burned there because there was some damage up in some of those some of the golf course there, I heard. Main Street Paul, Seahawks win. Yeah, what's the weather for Thursday night in Seattle? Will it be sloppy? Oh, yeah, Seahawks. Huge game for the Seahawks Thursday night in Seattle against the Rams. I won't go into the sports side of things right now, but let's take a look at the forecast for that because, you know, the Seahawks are actually pretty good at playing in the rain. The Rams probably not as much. Let's go to Thursday here on the European model. So this is, that game's Thursday night. Yeah, you can see there's rain across the region. It will have been pretty wet the last few days. And so you're definitely going to be having rain during the Seahawks game there. There's an atmospheric river to the south over Oregon. If that trends north, it would just be an absolute soaker of a game. Let's see if it's going to be windy there at all. Here we go. Let's see. Doesn't look like it'll be too windy, but it will be probably a wet one for the Seahawks game. So that'll probably make it a little bit more entertaining, folks. Keith from K-Dog Weather here. Nice to see you, Keith. Sean says nerding out on winds for South Whidbey tomorrow. Yeah, there's some wind stuff we got to talk about here, folks. So let's first let's look at the European model. It's a little bit lower resolution, but it is still good to look at. So you can see you get some. Actually, let's look at the current conditions first. That kind of helps put into context what we're seeing right now. Look at all of these wind alerts. So this is, let me turn off the flooding alerts real quick here. Just a note, flooding alerts in effect for the Cascades and the Olympics. And those are due to the rivers rising again. But we're just going to put on non-precipitation hazards. So we'll start with the wind advisory. It's in effect for the Central Sound here. So portions of northwest and west central Washington here on the wind advisory. South winds of 20 to 25 miles per hour with gusts of 45 to 55 miles per hour expected. They're going a little bit on the higher end here. This is what I want you guys to remember. Due to saturated grounds from previous heavy rain, expect more widespread impacts with these winds. That is really important. We're going to talk about that in detail here in a moment. I just want to point out here for our friends in eastern Washington, pretty big winds coming up there as well. 55 to 60 miles per hour for the Columbia Basin. Up toward Spokane there, you can see they're also warning for some pretty high winds. Let me click on their wind advisory there. It doesn't really seem to be letting me do that. Let's click up here. You can see, yeah, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour with isolated wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour for parts of eastern Washington. Again, saturated soils from previous rainfall could see higher impacts from this storm. So yeah, you have that wind advisory in effect for the lowlands of Washington State from Lewis County all the way up to the Canadian border. I'm not sure if there's a different wind advisory in effect for Whidbey. Let's see. No, it's the same one. Okay, so let's take a look at the forecast. Actually, before we do the forecast, and let's take a look at the current wind gusts and just kind of see what we're starting to get here. You get the southeasterlies. You can see 35 miles per hour at Whidbey Island. That's because you got a low offshore and the wind is kind of being sucked out through the Strait of Georgia and Admiralty Inlet there and off the coast a little bit. So 12Z Euro came in hot on the gust. So yeah, we'll look at the 18Z Euro here first. So this is the afternoon run here of the European model. As we go through Sunday night into Monday morning, look at some of these gusts we start seeing here on the coast. Looking at winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour, and then look in the northwest interior there as we go into Monday morning. You can see 52 in Bellingham, 55 in Friday Harbor, 50 at Whidbey Island. And you can see that as we go through the day, as we go into midday Monday into the afternoon, look at some of these gusts that come in here. 48 in Seattle, 50 in Everett, 55 on Whidbey Island, 58 on Orcas Island there, 57 in Bellingham. These peak winds are kind of from mid-morning through the afternoon. Look at some of these gusts in the mountains, up to 60 to 80 miles per hour potentially. And then you can see even a little bit further south on the lowlands, you get 47 in Shelton and Bremerton, some 50-mile-an-hour gusts showing up there in the Kitsap Peninsula, and then look at 45 in Tacoma, 42 in Olympia, 50 to 60 miles per hour on the coast. And this is just the first round of this. We likely get another round of wind coming in as we go through Wednesday, but that's a little bit uncertain at this time. So now what we can do is we can look at this on a higher resolution forecast. So let's start with the NAM. So the NAM model did pick up those winds gusting right now across parts of Whidbey. It's usually this is a little bit off on timing, but can sometimes get these winds right. So if we just play this all the way through the day tomorrow, you can see that you're getting this would be a pretty bad scenario if this verified. The coast is widespread 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts here as we go through tonight into tomorrow. And then look at the lowlands here. This is 45 to 50 miles per hour everywhere from Seattle south, and Seattle northward you're looking at 50 to 55 miles per hour with isolated gusts to 60 miles per hour. This is probably a bit overdone, but it's still showing what is possible. And the thing we have to keep in mind is think about the precipitation totals we've gotten these last few days. I mean, you have areas here just in the lowlands, not even up in the Cascades, but areas in the lowlands that have received upwards of 7 inches of rain in the past week. And that means the soils are super, super saturated. I mean, I was just walking around in my own yard here in Federal Way. The soil is super soft. And that is not good because that means that when you get the force of the wind kind of pushing on the trees, the roots aren't anchored as much because the soil's all wet and soft, and it can just kind of all get pulled around, and then that makes it easier for the winds to just essentially pull the trees down because they're not anchored tight enough in the strong soil because the soil's all wet and saturated. And so if you get widespread 50 plus mile per hour gusts, even 45 plus mile per hour gusts after it being so saturated, there can be big problems. Let's compare this to the high resolution rapid refresh model. Now this has been showing an interesting scenario that I don't know if it will verify or not. The high resolution rapid refresh keeps showing this area of 50 to 65 mile per hour gusts from Hood Canal over toward Everett, and it's been literally showing it for like multiple days, but I'm not sure if that is something that will verify, because no other model's really showing this as strong, like not even close. But overall you can see this is kind of showing the same thing with the exception of this Everett feature. With the exception of the Everett feature, you're showing kind of the same thing, 50 to 60 miles per hour on the coast. You could make the argument that the coast should have a high wind warning. You could also make the argument that the Northwest Interior and Whatcom County, San Juan County, and Island County could all be upgraded to a high wind warning based on some of these forecasts. You can see the lowlands, especially from Seattle down through the Kitsap Peninsula over towards Shelton, Tacoma, Olympia, all that, likely going to be in that 40 to 50 mile per hour range, maybe 45 to 55 miles per hour like that wind advisory is showing. We can go back also and look at the previous Euro because you kind of want to get a sense of the trend here. Yeah, so through Monday night, the Euro's been kind of holding steady, 55 to 60 on the coast. Seattle northward showing 50 to 60 miles per hour. There could be some really strong gusts north of Seattle tomorrow. And then look at Seattle southward, still really strong. I mean, 45 to 50 miles per hour is respectable at any time, but after how much rain we got, you got to be really, really careful with this. I mean, these are big gusts that could cause difficult things to happen with the tree damage and all that. So be prepared for power outages, folks. That's the biggest thing, is that you gotta be prepared for these power outages, because this is not something you want to see after you get all this rain. So let me see if I can find a graphic. Because I want to kind of talk a little bit more about how this stuff with saturated soils works. So let's see if I can pull this up. Hold on, folks. We can just use this one. This is admittedly not a great graphic. Actually, it doesn't even look like it's going to work on me. But basically, you know what we're talking about. That the stronger winds combined with the soils being super wet. This is actually something we can look at. We can look at our latest precipitation. It's kind of our like recap of the precipitation that we've seen here. Let me see if it's on here actually. You see our precipitation anomalies over the past 10 days here across the Northwest are like 5+ inches above normal, even down in the lowlands. So we've gotten just extraordinary amounts of rain. And if you look back at, we can actually set this to show it. If we go back through, say, the 8th, that was last Monday, when that atmospheric river started, to now, the rain amounts are like kind of off the charts. So this is just looking at the past week. And you're looking at some areas here, not necessarily the Seattle metro, but areas south of Seattle, down toward like Tacoma and Olympia, and then areas north of Seattle, which we'll look at in just a second, have gotten huge amounts of rain. Look at this. I mean, 7 inches for wide swaths of the foothills. The incredible amounts between Snoqualmie Pass and Mount Rainier, up toward 20 inches of rain. Olympia getting 6 inches, 6 inches in Shelton. The coast getting up to 8 inches. The Olympics had some huge amounts as well. And look at up north, where in the northwest interior, where you're potentially getting gusts up over 60 miles per hour, 50 to 60 miles per hour there, and you have totals in the 3 to 5 inch range. And this doesn't even count the amount of rain that's going to fall as these winds are happening and kind of before, because the winds peak mid-afternoon onward and we get a bunch more rain before that. So going through Monday, you can see you're looking at about 3/4 of an inch for the Seattle metro and most areas from Bellingham southward in the lowlands. The Olympics and the coast getting 1 to 3 inches. Same thing in the Cascades. Not a huge rainfall event, but because the rivers are high, then this is why all this precipitation does end up causing more flooding, because the rivers are already so high that they're not able to rise but remain below flood stage. You can see there Bellingham getting up to 1.5 inches of rain, but look at the Vancouver area. Look at the lower mainland. You're looking at maybe 4 inches in Vancouver, and so there's going to be some flooding problems in southwest British Columbia, that's for sure. Let me pull up real quick my favorite resource for that area's weather. Let me pull it up right here and show you guys. So this is my good friend Ryan's Facebook page here, Vancouver and the Lower Mainland weather page. This is a great resource for weather in British Columbia. And as you can see, Ryan's got a lot of updates on here. And Mark Ingalls also on there. Look at this. This is the Trans-Canada Highway. Look at that. Big problems up there. So I'm going to put a link to this in the chat here for folks who want to get some information on weather up in British Columbia there. I just threw that in the chat, you guys, so go and check that out. Now let's take a look. Let's take a look at the ensembles, actually. That would be important to do. Let's pull that up right here. So we'll look at the ensembles for just to kind of see how much of a see if there's any outliers, if we're getting an outlier for the winds. And this kind of allows you to see that we have 2 rounds of winds coming in here. So you can see right here, this is our Monday round of wind there, and the European model generally showing 45 miles per hour, so 45 to 50 miles per hour is the agreement there at SeaTac. Look at this next round that's a little bit longer and lasts from Tuesday into Wednesday. You got more members there starting to potentially show up toward 50 miles per hour. Now, let's look at Everett and see if we have any of these ensemble members trying to show what the high-resolution rapid refresh was showing with that crazy 60-mile-per-hour gust up in Everett. And you can see there are a few. There's a few members in here that are 55+. I mean, your ensemble average here in Everett is over 50 miles per hour, a lot of them showing 55+. And you see a few members in there at 60 miles per hour, which could be hedging toward that crazy solution the high-resolution rapid refresh was showing. Going up toward Whidbey Island, you can see the ensemble mean is nearing 60 miles per hour as we go through tomorrow afternoon, and you have a long period of 50+ mile per hour gusts, which could definitely cause some tree damage. And the other area I'm concerned about is Bellingham. You can see very good agreement, 50+ mile per hour gusts there. Some of the higher resolution forecasts are the ones that show that 60+ kind of thing going on. Possible? Is it super likely? Not really. But 50+ miles per hour with all this rain that just fell is going to cause some big problems, no doubt. So, yeah, let's see. Let me take a look at one more. I don't know the code to it, actually. Hold on. That would be Friday Harbor. Actually, I do know the code. I just it's just right here, so let's just click on it. Friday Harbor, look at this. If you're in the San Juans, if you're taking those ferries tomorrow, that is going to be that's going to be a pretty interesting ride. Look at that, 50 to 60 miles per hour. Really good agreement there. A few members in there showing some even higher stuff. But yeah, you can see the ferries are going to be rocking tomorrow. Not just the San Juans, but also some of the ones in the Sound as well. So yeah, let's see, get some things in the chat here. What about wind in Sammamish, Nadia asks. Let's take a look at that. I believe we'll just use this here. All right, wind in Sammamish. You're looking at likely 45 to 50 miles per hour, just like most of the rest of the lowlands there. Sammamish right out here to the east of Seattle. I don't know if that wind advisory is in effect for Sammamish, and it probably should be if it's not. So you can see the wind advisory is that area here. It looks like Sammamish is included there in the wind advisory. That's good to see. It doesn't include the foothills, which is a little bit interesting because the foothills are definitely going to get wind with this. I'm not really sure why they're not included in the wind advisory, but maybe that will be expanded at a later time. There is an argument to be made for some high wind warnings, especially for areas north of Everett. So we have to kind of see how that plays out. We can look at some other forecasts as well real quick. Let me just pull up the HRRR again, and we'll look back at the last run. You can see it's been consistent with this feature around Everett, and you can kind of see why if we go to some of the upper level winds here and we kind of let it play out. You get a little bit of a lee low developing there in the lee of the Olympics, and you see right here, you get this lee low developing, and you get the lee low develops about here, and you get these just crazy winds to the south of it. I mean, you're talking winds here at about 5,000 feet in this forecast that are looking at like 80 miles per hour. These are 80 knots, 80 knots, which is even stronger. I mean, these are crazy winds up at the about 5,000 feet. So that's kind of why it's showing that you get that lee low in there, and that's why it's showing the that area of winds right there near Everett. So there's a lot to worry about tomorrow, especially with those big winds. If we want to time that out here on the high resolution rapid refresh, let's start with what we're seeing right now. So as we go into tonight, into the morning, you see as we get to about 2 a.m. there, you get those winds really picking up on the coast and in the northwest interior. And you can see that as we go into the morning hours, those start to pick up in the Sound. As we go to about 7 a.m., you see some 50-plus mile-per-hour gusts on the coast, and then you start getting toward 9 to 10 a.m., the strongest winds in the lowlands. You see as we get to noon onward, that's when you likely get those strongest winds. That's about when the HRRR shows that feature there around Everett, and then look at these gusts up toward 50 miles per hour for parts of the Seattle metro as well. So overall, it's going to be pretty windy. I think the NAM is probably a better approximation than the HRRR with that interesting little feature there. But let's shift gears a little bit. Let's take a look at some of the flooding that's been going on, especially in Auburn. I was down there earlier today, and I want to show this to you guys. This is a video that I took this morning with my drone. This is Highway 167, you guys. This is, for those that know the area, this is just north of the 277th Street exit in Kent. And you can see the entire northbound side of Highway 167 is flooded. And look how close the water is to that southbound side as well. So this is going to be a big problem for the commute there in the South Sound. So we're going to take a look at that here. This is the Washington State DOT website, and you can see there's a lot of road closures. And look at 167. I mean, it is closed, and by closed we mean completely closed there from just south of Auburn all the way through Kent. And that's going to be a big issue with the commute tomorrow. And looking at the live feed here, there is a camera, I believe, that was pointed at the let's see. There's a camera that was pointed at the flooding. Let me see if I can pull it up, so we can see. Looks like you can see they're trying to do some stuff on the freeway there potentially. I don't know if we can get zoomed in enough to get the other one. It might be, there's the camera at the Green River. You can see the road is empty. The flooding is just to the north of the interchange there, but I don't really know if you can kind of see it right there. So this is going to cause some big problems for some of the commute, which is also, that commute is also going to be impacted by heavy rain. So just heads up, just be really careful out there, you guys. Be sure to not drive through a lot of standing water. That is never a good situation and never usually ends well. And watch out if you are driving through that kind of standing water and you have to watch out for waves from other vehicles slamming into you. That can cause problems very quickly. Let's look here at the city of Auburn. This is something. There's been a lot of problems in Auburn because what's happening is Auburn is surrounded by 2 rivers. So there are big areas with evacuation. So here's the latest update from the city. Folks want an update, but we don't have much to say at the moment because evacuations are still in effect. We're actively monitoring water levels and are not seeing actionable changes in either direction. So they're just kind of staying where they are. We appreciate everyone's patience while we all work through this flooding event. We wish we had good news to share. Yeah, so this is the area of the evacuation. You can see in Auburn from 42nd Street Northeast to 277th Street has been asked to evacuate, including some pretty big apartment housing complexes and stuff like that. If we take a look here, there's also a get set evacuation here for areas from 4th Street Northeast in Auburn up toward 24th Street and east of M Street there along the Green River. And a lot of this, you guys, is due to stormwater. So what's happening is that the river is flooding, but it's the river is not overflowing into communities. In my video here, it's not the Green River that is on 167. In fact, in this video, the Green River's way up here. It's up here and it's kind of over a little bit off to the right side. But this is all floodwater from the Green River. You can see areas in here have puddles in the parking lot because the water's coming up through the storm drains. And what happened is that there is a pump. There's a pump up in Kent that in these situations, you're pumping water over the levee and back into the river so that it can exit these farmlands and industrial areas and housing complexes and all that and get into the river. But that pump stopped working last night. So this water has nothing to do but rise. And you can see what happens when you just have these whole areas flooded, whole fields flooded. And this is just a very small portion of it. This lasts for miles in both directions. 277th Street is completely closed from the Federal Way side of the valley to the Kent side of the valley. So there's a lot of flooding going on, and this may just continue to rise if that pump doesn't get fixed, and with the fact that there's going to be more rain. So this is the thing that concerns me, is that the rivers aren't necessarily going to be rising in the Auburn Valley, especially because we're going to get more snow. But when you look at the rain accumulation, and we're going to look at this specifically, remember in the context of Auburn here, we're going to just put this out all the way through Thursday. And look at that. All the way through Thursday, a lot of this is snow in the Cascades, which is really good news. But down here in the lowlands, it's going to be really wet. You're looking at potentially 2 to 3 more inches of rain this week in the lowlands. And that is not good because situations like this one don't get better with that because the rivers are going to stay high. There's still going to be runoff going into the reservoirs that control the Green and White rivers. And all these floodwaters that are just sitting in the valleys, don't think that they're going to get any better when there's 2 to 3 inches of rain falling, because they're most certainly not going to. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on there. I had some more footage I'll show you guys here too. So this is a White River up at Game Farm Park there in Auburn. And you can see, there's a tree going under the bridge while I was standing there. But this is really full. This is up in moderate flood stage. Down in the city of Pacific, I have some footage I need to upload that shows how this river is literally right up against the flood walls, which is really not a good thing to see. This was a photo I took yesterday, Saturday night there. You can see it was a oddly serene moment with some of our clear skies. And this is all normally fields. This is all you would see there is fields and the apartments over there and then Mount Rainier. But the Green River, which is not even in this image, it's way over here on the left side, has flooded so much, and all this water is just staying in the valleys because it has nowhere to go. And as the river slowly rises and just stays steady, then the water doesn't go anywhere. So it's going to be a rough go for some people because this isn't getting any better. So yeah, there you can see those evacuations were posted last night. So yeah, you guys be sure to follow me on Twitter if you don't already. Let's take a look at the excessive rainfall outlook. Actually, this is kind of what I want to see. This is, you see the total precipitation that they're estimating here over the past 7 days. Actually, this is for the next 7 days. So you'd think that this is for the past 7 days, but it actually looks like this is for the next 7 days. So we have another 3 inches of rain coming up here. So here's that excessive rainfall outlook. That's today. This is the one I was looking at. This is for tomorrow. So this is kind of highlighting your areas that are going to be having a higher chance of flooding. So you see that includes the Cascades from the Canadian border down toward northern Oregon. It includes the coasts from the central Oregon coast all the way up to Cape Flattery, and then does barely include parts of the Puget Sound area, and then the I-5 corridor from Olympia down toward Kelso. So all that area is going to be having a higher chance of potential flooding, especially on Monday. So you remember, you guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. Let me check the chat here. Andrew says WeatherBug predicting potential thunderstorms. Yeah, let's take a look at the lightning flash density. I don't know if this is really something that's going to verify, but sometimes these atmospheric rivers, yeah, you can see that there. Sometimes these atmospheric rivers have kind of stuff in them. You could get some heavier areas of rain tomorrow, potentially bringing some lightning chances there, especially over Whidbey Island and some of the coast as we go into the morning. If we look at the high-resolution rapid refresh model and we look at the simulated radar. So as we go through tonight, you get to about 8 to 9 p.m. Some of that rain starts moving into the lowlands. By midnight, you have rain at times across the region, heavy at times as you go through Monday morning for your commute here. So here's 6 a.m., here's 7 a.m. Look at that, heavy rain at times. This is all the way up to Bellingham, from like Kelso all the way up to Bellingham and all that. And then that thunderstorm potential is kind of as you go into the morning. You see some of these showers moving through could be heavy at times and stuff like that. But again, all this, not really any snow in the mountains. Then it starts to cool down as you go into getting that next system coming in on Tuesday. And you can see, look at all that snow starting to fall in the mountains, bringing some interesting lines of showers going into the lowlands too. But that snow level is going to be crashing, so that's something we have to watch. Hey, you guys, Jonas Miller himself is in the chat here. What time will the SmackDown occur? Jonas Miller, that SmackDown's on Friday night. Thank you, Jonas, very much for your generosity. Thunder showers possible. Yeah, there is a chance of thunderstorms, you guys, tomorrow, with some of these showers that move through kind of on the backside of our pretty progressive atmospheric river. This model doesn't show it as well as I would like it to. Here, let's see the NAM model. This is not yet running. Let's look at the previous one. Okay, as we go into... oh, there we go. Okay, as we go into Monday morning, you see some of these showers moving through the area. Some of these are what could potentially have some thunderstorms in them, especially this signature there, that convergence zone maybe up by Whidbey Island and stuff like that. All right, Dan's Backcountry, welcome to the chat, my friend. We desperately need snow. I was at high elevation this weekend and there was no snow. I've never seen it this way before. The lack of snow is alarming. That is very true. The lack of snow is very alarming. And we can look at kind of what we're seeing in terms of the snow forecast here. This is the European model looking at that snow potential So as we go through the atmospheric river time here, you can see all the way through Monday night, the snow level starts to come down Monday night. But through 7 p.m. Monday, you get a couple inches up in the North Cascades and basically nothing anywhere else because that snow level is so high. There's going to be a lot of rain falling, but barely any snow. Now, as we go through into Tuesday, there you see that you really start to get some snow moving in, and so through Tuesday evening you see maybe an inch or so at Snoqualmie Pass, up to 10 inches at Stevens, a couple feet in the North Cascades, and about a foot there around Mount Rainier. But look at this system that comes in Wednesday, a colder system going through Wednesday morning into midday Wednesday, bringing some bigger snow totals. Still not doing great at Snoqualmie Pass. You're looking only about a foot through the end of the week. But look at Stevens Pass. You're looking at 3 feet potentially, multiple feet in the North Cascades, multiple feet in the Olympics, and Mount Rainier in the Southern Cascades also getting some pretty good totals there. So the fact of the matter is we're going to be getting snow. How fast that happens, hard to tell. Going off all the way into the end of next week, you see we may continue to build up those snow totals. We're looking at maybe a few feet by next Saturday, so about a week there. We could be getting some pretty decent storms coming through every few days as we do at this time of year, and each one is going to be colder most likely, and we are going to get snow with each one in the mountains. So overall, Dan, like you were saying, yeah, no snow up at the higher elevations right now. We're in a pretty sorry state with our snowpack, which I can pull up right here. But it looks promising. It does look promising, and I haven't been able to say that in quite a while. Let's see. I think this is what we want here. They changed this website up a few years ago, and I still don't really understand how it works. So let's see if this will show us our snow water equivalent data. It seems to be making it for us. Yeah, look at this, you guys. This is very sad. I mean, the Cascades of central northern Washington here, 45% of our snowpack, 0% for the parts of the Olympics, 12%, 20%, 3%. I mean, this is just this is terrible. I mean, I've not seen a map like this for the Northwest in a very long time. I mean, this is kind of like 2014 level stuff right here. But thankfully, we have the chance to reverse this. We have the chance to start really building up some snow. But this is, you don't see this in mid-December, quite honestly. This is kind of a testament to a couple things, how our November was not super active. I mean, it was a little bit in the beginning of the month, and then we just kind of dropped off a little bit. But this is really a testament to how strong that atmospheric river was, that it knocked out the snowpack so much that you're getting single-digit numbers for Oregon and below 50% of snowpack, even some were down toward 10% for parts of Washington. Let's see, Dan giving me some more information in the chat here. She's saying the Olympics need the snow bad. The summit of Mount Pershing and the Jefferson Ridge were bare. I've never seen them bare at this time of year. I was able to access the same exact high terrain I would normally only in the summer. In December, I would have never imagined it being this barren. Yeah, and it makes sense when you look at parts of the Olympics showing up at literally 0% of their snowpack right now. It's pretty sad to see these numbers, you guys. Joe saying in the chat there, the Yakima River is the highest I've seen in a long time. Yeah, we looked at that earlier in the live stream. Yakima River is still in minor flood stage down by Benton City. And the Natchez River as well. Yeah, and both of them are going to go back up into flood stage as we go through the next couple of days here and in the middle of of this week here. Yeah, so this is not something we want to see. We can also look at the drought monitor. I know this is not liked by all, but I do find it to be a pretty helpful graphic here. So we did drop off some of the drought here through the previous map. You can see that if we look at the percentages, actually, the percentages usually show up down here. Most of the states still in drought, but we dropped the D2 to D4 category from 33% to 18% with the atmospheric river. And this will likely continue to drop as more of the data from the atmospheric river comes into these models. The next one comes out next Thursday, so we'll be sure to look at that in the videos on my channel here. But you can see that we are getting better. We're getting better, but it's not great. Still, I mean, we are still not in a good situation. You can see this only area of the state that has no drought levels at all is right up there in the Olympics, which is kind of what you'd expect. But we're slowly making some improvements. We can actually look at we can make a comparison and look at this time last year. So let's do that, you guys. So this is how you work the drought monitor site. We're gonna go to Washington, and we'll put December 9th, 2025 on the right, and we will go to December 10th, 2024 on the left. So you can see 2025, or this is what we were at right now. But look, if we scroll this out and look at what we were at last year at this time. 2024 was not like an abnormally wet year. In fact, we were on the drier side. But look at how different our drought situation was last year versus this year. So pretty big difference, pretty sad to see. And like James says there in the chat, hopefully March and April we can catch up. Yeah, definitely. It can happen, and with La Nina, you have a higher chance of a wet spring. Of course, it depends on how long La Nina lasts. Yeah, let's take a look again at some of these. We had some really big problems with the wind, you guys, over in Wenatchee and Leavenworth and stuff like that, in addition to some big rain problems and some flooding problems over there. So in case you missed this when I was covering it earlier, eastern Washington, gusts up to 60 miles per hour possible, with some higher terrain getting up towards 70 miles per hour. And then the thing we're really concerned about for tomorrow, you guys, is this wind in the lowlands. You can see the wind advisory in effect. I clicked on Seattle here. This is in effect from 10 p.m. this evening to 10 p.m. Monday. So 24 hours that this wind advisory is in effect, with south winds of 20 to 25 miles per hour, with gusts of 45 to 55 miles per hour expected. Regardless of when this would happen, this is concerning for the Puget Sound area, because usually whenever you get gusts over 50 miles per hour, you start getting power outages. However, due to saturated grounds from previous heavy rain, expect more widespread impacts with these winds. Anytime you get wet soil, your chance of wind impacts goes way up. So this is somewhat concerning. We've been looking at some of the different forecasts for it. This is not anything to take lightly. So, yeah. Let me check something in the chat here. Brad Castaneda is saying Pacific Northwest Water Management, they're draining reservoirs ahead of storms, and that dump is pushing the white and green in Yakima into flood stage. Then drought hits, and we're left wondering why storage is low. Part of the reason why this is happening is because, and we'll just go and pull up the forecast here, or the Mud Mountain Dam, actually. So basically what would happen, and the reason that this is going on, this filled up really quickly here, the White River did. Brad's saying in the chat there, it seems like something is broken. Like, why do they have to have low reservoir storage and then you have to flood everything? It's like this pendulum is swinging back and forth. But my take on it, at least, is that these were probably pretty low as when we went through the summer, because we had a very dry summer. But then when you get a huge event like this atmospheric river, it just fills up so fast. And we did have a pretty wet November and end of October, relatively speaking. So through those last few weeks of October and then the first couple weeks of November, we got about 10 inches of rain, which is pretty significant. And so that filled up these reservoirs quite a bit, especially here in western Washington. We did get much higher reservoirs through about like mid-November, and it just kind of stayed there. It didn't really go down much because we just kind of got less active as we went through the middle of November. And then what happened is we get this huge atmospheric river in here, And if they hadn't released any of this water, you'd be overtopping the dams and you have huge problems. So they have to release it, and then it's already full because of what we filled it up with over the past couple months or so here. And then you get more storms coming in, and you just have to keep releasing it. You can see on the forecast for the Green River that there is a point where they're going to kind of bring back some of those releases and calm it down a little bit as we go into next week, potentially about a week from now. But it remains pretty high here, and all those situations with all the stormwater flooding and stuff like that is just going to continue when you have it just staying here, rising. You can see it's higher than it's forecasted to be right now. This is the Green River, or the White River up at Mud Mountain Dam. You can see how they're doing the outflow, and you can, if we actually extend, we can pull this outlook back all the way, I think at least, all the way to before the atmospheric river. So you see right here, as we went through the start of December, they were slowly increasing the amount they were releasing because of the atmospheric river being in the forecast. But then look, as the atmospheric river hit and the reservoir started filling up, they had to release a lot more as you went into Monday and then into Tuesday and Wednesday. And then you can see they stopped for a little bit Wednesday night because it got too high. But then as that rain just kept going, they just had to keep releasing this water out of the Mud Mountain Dam. And then you can see that forecast is for it to continue being released at about 10,000 cubic feet per second, which is what they're doing. 10,300 you see there on this as of 4 p.m. So it's interesting to see how all this works. It is concerning, obviously, for a lot of places that this is going to go on for so long, especially for folks down in Auburn. But this is the kind of the price we pay for not having any problems with like yearly floods. Instead of yearly floods, you just get the occasional time where you get this big influx of water. One thing that is worth noting, though, I did see on the City of Auburn's Facebook page that they said that this is the most water they've seen in the Green River Valley since the Howard Hansen Dam was built, and that was back in the 60s. So that's pretty interesting to see. Let me check in on the chat here. Dan's Backcountry saying there's only so much water that can be retained at a time. Yeah, absolutely. They start storing that water a little bit more once the snow starts melting. But right now we don't even have any snow. And basically what would have happened if we were to start storing all this water right now, then we'd have to keep these rivers in flood stage all the way out until spring, and then you just have way more flooding. So let me keep going in the chat here. Keith says Meteorology 101 on YouTube. Yeah, there's some nice online courses and stuff for stuff like that. There's a lot of really cool online courses these days in so many subjects. Sean says that Tuesday-Wednesday storm is a menace, is expected to make headlines here, but also in eastern Washington, Rockies, and Great Lakes, and staying strong all the way onto the East Coast. Just for the fun of it, you guys, we can take a look at that and just look at like the whole country. Here we go. So Sean was saying that Tuesday-Wednesday storm becomes a pretty big one as it goes off throughout the rest of the country. So you can see it moves into the northwest there, and then you see that storm start to really develop. That's pretty strong all the way over across Alberta, then moves across parts of the Great Lakes, bringing rain widespread and then some snow on its backside. And then it looks like it starts to push off toward the East Coast, big widespread rain, maybe some snow in there as well. And you can see this kind of storm train, that these storms start in the Pacific Northwest, and sometimes they move up into Canada, sometimes they move across the rest of the country, and they just keep going, and you just get multiple storms throughout the next few days, and they just keep going across the country, but they always start here, and we always get some pretty big impacts. Jason asks in the chat, shall we worry about the total precipitation deficit in SeaTac this year? It seems to be 5 to 6 inches below normal so far. I'd think precipitation at the Cascades should be more important than SeaTac data. Yes, but the amount of it, so yes, the Cascades precipitation is definitely the one you want to watch because that's what impacts your water levels. But the data at SeaTac kind of shows your general trend. And we can look at that here. This is something we look at somewhat frequently. This is Here, let's pull it up, our climate data. So we're going to go to observe weather, and we'll go to our daily climate report for SeaTac Airport. So this is kind of what always shows that precipitation deficit. So since January 1st, you can see observed value is 30.16 inches. Normal value is 36.05 inches. So we are minus 5.89 there. We are below normal. We're running actually above what we were at last year, which is good to see. The water year, which is basically October 1st to September 30th every year, we're running above normal. And then, of course, for the month to date, we are running far above normal, about 2 inches above normal there for the month of December. So we have brought this deficit down since fall. We were up toward like 8 inches earlier, and now we're down to 6. We'll see if we can, if some of these systems that move in can keep us down there. Let's take a look. We can look at actually at some of the ensembles here. We'll look at Seattle, and we will look at the rain potential over the next, not the snow graph. It's not really any chance of that. Look, just the next week, you're getting up to potentially 3 inches of rain. Looking out in the extended forecast, way out into the end of December there, you're looking at potentially another 5 inches of rain. So maybe we get close. If we stay active, we may get that precipitation deficit down to something like a half inch to an inch from your normal. But we're going to have to be on the pretty wet side for that to happen. So to bottom line, yeah, you can probably worry about the precipitation deficit is what I would say. But we might get close. Kind of watch it to see how things play out. This is a good thing, too, to see, 24-hour precipitation. You see how this one that's technically being billed as the atmospheric river doesn't bring us as much rain as the next system does, Tuesday into Wednesday, which will bring us about an inch in 24 hours. This one only brings us about 0.6 inches. But you can see how that changes if you look out on the coast. Say, for example, in Astoria, you get a little bit more rain with each. You get multiple systems that all have about the same amount of rain. If we look up at Snoqualmie Pass, note that this will be snow after a certain point, but another decent round of rain coming for the Cascades, a couple inches for some places, and maybe a little bit higher for some other, for some localized areas here. If we look at the total rain, we'll look at these higher resolution models through Monday. You can see it shows some broad rain shadowing from northeast of the Olympic Peninsula, and then you get that area of rain to the south of Seattle, as we kind of saw with this last atmospheric river. The high resolution rapid refresh probably will show you about the same thing. You can see it there through Tuesday. You get about an inch of rain, Seattle south, about that rain shadow there around the northeast of the Olympics, and then you get about an inch of rain on the coast. And then this is showing up toward 4 inches of rain in the mountains, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense with what could be driving some of those higher totals in those elevated rivers yet again. Yeah, be sure to put some more questions in the chat, you guys, so we can cover a few more things for you, see what you guys want to talk about with this weather. Definitely some stuff going to be going on up in Canada with that's for sure. Yeah, we'll take a look at the rivers again while we're at it because it's important. It is really important for sure. Someone said the Natchez River is going to be on the high side, so here, let's take a look at that. It's still an action stage right now, the Natchez River is. And you can see it gets above minor flood stage there as we go into Monday night and stays above minor flood stage all the way through Thursday. So that's going to be an interesting one. The Skookumchuck River there over in Bucota near Centralia, Chehalis. Again, getting up into flood stage a couple of different times, basically staying above minor flood stage from Wednesday night through Saturday midday. So again, not as high as it was previously with the last atmospheric river, but still on the high side with all of the rain that's coming in. Chehalis River is going to be flooding again. Not too much. You can see how long that crest was there. Then it starts to go back up as you go into the end of the week. Let's check the chat here. Mind covering the wind in the Gig Harbor area, Brad asks. Of course, let's take a look at that. Let's use the NAM first to get a little bit of a higher end potential. So Gig Harbor, right next to the Tacoma Narrows there. And you can see you're looking at about 45 to 50 miles per hour, likely I'd say 45 to 48 or something like that. So pretty strong gust potential in Gig Harbor. This is a new run of the NAM that's actually going right now. So you can see basically showing Seattle northward 50 to 55 miles per hour. Pretty significant. That could definitely cause some tree damage, you guys. Remember, saturated soils means that it's easier for the trees to fall. The coast showing up at 50 to 60 miles per hour there. But the big thing to pay attention to, Seattle showing up 48 miles per hour. Seattle northward all the way up through Canada showing up at 45 to 55 miles per hour. And that is a big problem with areas getting multiple inches of rain in just the last 7 days. Soil saturation can go all the way back to weeks before an event too. So if you look back toward the end of November, I mean, we've gotten probably 7 to 10 inches of rain for some locations. So this could definitely cause some areas of power outages with the saturated soils. No doubt about that at all. So definitely some problems coming up with this. We can take a look at the Weather Service's forecast discussion here and see what they're kind of talking about, what could end up happening here with this storm. Let's take a look here. This actually talks about the atmospheric river. So the atmospheric river pattern remains in place across the Pacific Northwest. A strong 300 millibar jet stream continues to transport moisture into the region, with the nose of this jet stream expected to remain along the Washington coast through much of this week. A frontal system with this synoptic setup will swing through the region tonight into Monday. The first system is expected to be the warmest of the systems passing through this week, with snow levels hovering around 8,000 to 9,000 feet. The rain will arrive late this evening into Monday, with the high-res guidance showing more of a convective type mode with the showers, which kind of means more off and on instead of the steady rain we got with our previous atmospheric river there. Continuing on, there is also a 20 to 30% chance of thunder, especially along the coast, which may produce locally heavier amounts up to about a half inch to a quarter inch per hour. The rain with this round will wrap up Monday evening, all said and done. This round of rain is expected to have about half inch to 1 inch in the lowlands, 1 to 2 inches on the coast, and 2 to 3 inches in the mountains, with the potential for locally higher amounts exceeding 4 inches. This will cause additional rises in streams and rivers. See the hydrology section. We'll look at that in just a second. In addition to rain, a wind advisory continues from tonight through tomorrow evening. For breezy southwest winds of 25 to 30 miles an hour with gusts of 45 to 55 miles per hour. The highest wind gusts are expected along the Pacific coast, although the threat remains low at the present time for seeing wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour, which would be the high wind warning threshold. The threat is non-zero, but it is quite low. Another system with this atmospheric river setup will move into the area Tuesday into Wednesday. This system will be cooler as snow levels drop Tuesday night into Wednesday down to about 2,000 feet. The trickiest part of the forecast is determining how quickly the snow levels will drop. Models show more of a delay in the drop of the snow level occurring Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. The warm air mass may cut into the snow accumulations, and this may delay the cold winds behind the cold front, bringing the snow levels down. There's still a 50% chance that Snoqualmie Pass could see over a foot of snow through Wednesday evening, and a 90% chance for Stevens Pass. 48-hour total through Wednesday night, just over an inch of rain in the Puget Sound and Northwest Interior to about 1.6 inches in the Southwest Interior. We are also going to have waves increasing on the coast Monday through Wednesday, with waves up to 15 to 17 feet. But the combination of wave height and period between the waves falls short of a high surf advisory criteria. And then looking long term through the rest of the week, Wednesday into next Sunday, precipitation decreases Wednesday evening. A third system appears likely Thursday into Friday with a similar amount of precipitation to the previous two systems. Temperatures will cool to around average with highs in the mid to upper 40s and lows dipping into the mid to upper 30s. Ensembles favor a more active weather pattern continuing into next week, although some splits are possible in some of those solutions. So we do look to remain active, bottom line. Looking at that hydrology section here, Most rivers will continue to recede through tonight. An atmospheric river is arriving Monday morning, with rivers rising again by late morning. Even with the rises, most of the rivers will be staying below flood stage on Monday. Rivers going over flood stage will be the ones that have not dropped much below flood stage over the weekend, like the Skagit, Cedar, White, and Cowlitz below Mayfield Dam. That you could probably include the Snoqualmie in this as well. Rain easing Monday night into Tuesday before the tail end of the atmospheric river reaches the area later Tuesday into Wednesday, increasing those precipitation rates again Tuesday night into Wednesday. This second round of precipitation will drive some rivers above flood stage, with major flooding possible along the Skagit and then down toward the lower reaches of the Snoqualmie, down near Monroe and Snohomish and stuff like that. Cooler air moving into the area Tuesday night adds to some uncertainty to the forecast river levels. Current forecasts have snow levels dropping to 2,000 to 2,500 feet by Wednesday morning. There is moisture with this second surge of the atmospheric river, but the cooler air will keep some of the moisture in the mountains in the form of snow. This combination makes for tricky river forecasting. A flood watch is in effect from Monday morning through Thursday afternoon across the lowlands. So we got a flood watch in effect for most of the area for an entire week yet again. Let's pull that up. So you can see there the flood watch in effect for the whole region. Monday morning through Thursday afternoon. Flooding caused by excessive rainfall continues to be possible. The impacts here: excessive runoff may result in flooding of rivers, creeks, streams, and other low-lying and flood-prone locations. This is already happening in some places. Creeks and streams may rise out of their banks. Flooding may occur in poor drainage in urban areas. Storm drains and ditches may become clogged with debris, and area creeks and streams are running high and could flood with more heavy rain. Additional details here: a series of weather systems this week will bring another round of significant rainfall to western Washington late tonight through Wednesday. Preliminary liquid totals of 2 to 6 inches, locally higher in some spots, will cause additional sharp rises to area rivers. Urban and small stream flooding remains possible for areas with poor drainage, and very saturated soils will maintain increased risk for potential landslides and debris flows off of burn scars. So there's a lot of potential problems with some of the flooding there, and not to mention, as they've been talking about, the wind potential with the high winds and saturated soil combination. So yeah, that's about all we got going on right now, you guys. Recapping, you got the wind, you got the flooding, and you got then that change down to lower snow levels. So you can see again another somewhat widespread round of river flooding coming in, but not nearly as bad as our previous one. A couple rivers look to remain above flood stage well after these systems, mainly the White and Green rivers down there in the Auburn area. And then you see most of the other rivers will have a somewhat quicker crest and then go back down. So it's going to be a somewhat difficult week for people yet again, especially with the flooding, as some people are just starting to recover and the rivers are going to rise once more. And then another thing to watch out for, of course, is the wind. Multiple rounds of wind possible. Strongest winds with this first round on Monday from Seattle northward there, and on the coast where you may be reaching up towards 60 miles per hour. You may get some gusts potentially approaching 60 miles per hour in the northwest interior, Whidbey Island, Admiralty Inlet area, and the San Juans. And for more information on that, as always, be sure to subscribe here on Western Washington Weather. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe the videos. It's very great to have you guys all on here. And be sure to follow the Western Washington Weather Facebook group, and then follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. I've been posting a lot of updates on there, especially on the Facebook group. I've been trying to get some of those updates that are on Facebook, and what you're seeing with some of those like evacuation areas in Auburn and stuff like that, which I will just cover one more time for you guys before we get off the stream. So again, 167 is closed. That's going to be a big problem with tomorrow's commute. And then you can see you got that level 2 evacuation for parts of northeast Auburn there, east of the Auburn airport, from M Street over to the Green River and between 4th Street and 24th Street. And then, of course, the ongoing large area of level 3 evacuations from Highway 167 to the Green River, from 42nd Street up to 77th. So, overall, not a great situation there in Auburn. Stay tuned for more information on the Facebook group. Of course, I'm doing my daily briefings as we go. We'll do another one as we go into tomorrow morning. And I'll be sure to be uploading some more footage from some of the flooding rivers as we go into tonight as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Stay safe, everybody out there, and stay tuned for my next briefing because we got a lot more to talk about, a lot more storms and all that. So thank you guys very much for watching. Stay safe out there. Stay tuned for more. Have a good day tomorrow with all that wet commute, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you all very